One of the victims of the fire which occurred at the hijacked Usindiso building in Marshalltown last year blames authorities. Sthembiso Ndebele says government could have prevented this. A commission of inquiry looking into the fire found that the City of Johannesburg and the Johannesburg Property Company are partly responsible for the tragedy. Over 70 people lost their lives and many more remain displaced.
Beyazi ukuthi kuhlala abantu laphayana ukuba bebengafuni kwenzeke lento eyenzakalile bekumele basi-informe before long time before singena bekufanele singangeni laphayana but basivumelile senzani sangene bayazi futhi ukuthi kukhona abantu abahlala ngaphakathi laphayana abazange beze kithi ukusitshela ukuthi no lento eniyenzayo irongi yokuthi nihlala ngaphakathi siyabablame vele kulungile ukuthi bablame because bebeyazi ukuthi there is people inside there and singabantu nathi at the same time ekugcineni singabantu.
Well, another survivor, Mngomezulu, is appealing to government to provide him with a safe and dignified place to stay.
So namanje I'm not safe actually. Man nothola nje indawo esafe yokuhlala andiyiboni into engathi mhlambi ngoba ngiyakwazi ukusukuma ekseni ngihambe nabanye abantwana ngiyophanda nami bese ndizibuyele ntambama. So manje ubuya ntambama ngiloko ngicela uhlamba apha kwakho ngicela ukuthi into ozohlamba sikhona kodwa kumele ndiyocela umuntu ngingene emkhukhwini wakhe ndihlambe ngiphinde ngibuyele emotweni
ufuna nje into
so andikwazi ukupheka andikwazi ngikhalela nje just indawo ukuthi ndizikhone nje.
Well, let's now try to make sense of the report with the Socio-Economic Rights Institute attorney, Osmond Mngomezulu. Osmond, good morning. Thank you so much for making time for us. Of course, this is part A of the report. We're still waiting for part B, which is going to deal with the hijacking of the building. But what do you draw from this report? Also looking at how many failures that have been, also the failures coming from the city of Johannesburg in terms of ensuring that the bylaws are adhered to.
Good morning, Adrian. Firstly, we welcome the report issued by the Commission yesterday, 5 May. And as you have correctly stated in your intro, the report finds the Commission partly responsible and liable for the calamity at Usindiso building. And interestingly, and correctly so, the report says the consequences of the fire would have been mitigated had the city complied with its legal obligations, both as the owner of the building and the municipality of the area. It is the position that as SERI we had advanced. We were looking at the city's responsibility and liability, both as the owner of the property, the building Usindiso, and the municipality of the area.
Yeah, because yes, the other part is the agreement that the City of Johannesburg has gone into with Usindiso Ministries, which was using the building for women who have been abused and victims of abuse. But what the report finds that even then there was no change in terms of changing what can be done in the building. It used to be a office block, and we know that this is where the past documents used to be processed, but it was never changed to becoming a residential building.
That's correct. The city had submitted ownership documentation which were showing the history of the building, including what it is zoned for. It was zoned as Industrial 1. Indeed, Industrial 1 would include residential, but witnesses and experts testified before the commission that that does not take place automatically. As much as it is zoned for Industrial 1, one would still require to follow due process to use the building for residential purposes, and there must be a certificate of occupation and all other permits that would then require the building to be used as residential. The city was unable to produce any evidence of that conversion. It is for that reason that the commission found that the building had not been zoned for residential purpose, but was an office block.
Yep. But then in 2018, it was that the Social Development Department said shut the building down, and that wasn't done. Instead, what the report finds is that both the Usindiso ministries as well as the City of Johannesburg actually abandoned the building. That's the phrase that they use.
No, absolutely. The lease agreement that you mentioned lapsed in May 2013. That would mean from 2013, Johannesburg Property Company knew that the lease had expired, but it doesn't seem from the evidence that adequate steps were taken either to renew the lease or to terminate it. What we do see from the evidence is that sometime in 2017 or 2018, there was an attempt to renew the lease almost 5 years later, which was declined. And then it was then abandoned. The shelter was abandoned by Usindiso ministries. And this was brought to the attention of the city. And the city indeed, as you correctly said, with its Department of Social Development, undertook an audit at the building and found that there were still approximately 19 women who were living on the property from the days when it was run as a shelter. And the report, the audit, established all the deplorable living conditions at the building and recommended that the residents be resettled to temporary emergency accommodation and the shelter and the building to be shut down. But that did not happen. It did not take place.
Yeah. Part of the recommendations is that the board of directors of the Johannesburg Property Company must consider taking appropriate action against Ms. Helen Botha, the Chief Executive Officer of the Johannesburg Property Company, for the total disregard, it says, of managing the Usindiso building, despite knowledge of the disastrous state that it was in since at least 2019. So you have Helen Botha, she is still there. Action would be taken. According to this recommendation, the board must then take action against her. But it also speaks about the political players, which includes the MMCs. And I was saying earlier on to the team that if you take into consideration the instability that has been at the City of Johannesburg and how many MMCs have also been changed, so the cabinet of the City of Johannesburg has changed so many times, which political figure then should be held accountable?
Well, that's an issue that the Commission has correctly sent back to the City of Johannesburg under the auspices of the mayor. But it had specifically mentioned the MMC for housing and public safety, under whose portfolio this matter falls. But it's not just the instability in the political figures that was at play here. But as SERI, we brought to the Commission the fact that most of the executives who came to testify before the Commission were in an acting capacity, including the fire chief officer, Metro Police, and many others in the planning department were in an acting position. And the Commission correctly says that state of affairs is not desirable because we see it as creating instability. And on the issue of Ms. Botha, we strongly welcome that finding and recommendation because as SERI, she is one of the witnesses. We cross-examined two witnesses, the fire chief and Ms. Botha. Mm-hmm. We submitted an application to cross-examine her and identified her breaches and failures under cross-examination. And when we made written submissions, it was one of our recommendations that she must be subjected to to disciplinary proceedings. But we accept as well that there are labor laws in the country, and the Commission correctly says investigations must be taken with a view to institute disciplinary proceedings.
Well, one of the recommendations that you made as a Siri, as well as Norton Rose attorneys, was that there should be compensation to the victims of the families, including also trying to provide housing and gainful employment through understandable gainful employment. And the Commission argues that this falls outside of its mandate. What sort of money is it that Siri was looking at? How much should these families be compensated?
Well, obviously, we had left it to the Commission to determine the modalities, but we submitted, and we strongly felt that the victims of the fire deserved some form of monetary compensation and to be provided with housing opportunities. But we had not put a specific figure. And this is the aspect of the report with which we have some reservations, because we accept the Commission that it says it doesn't have the mandate to deal with those. But we had made a case for a good faith type of compensation, not one that would be in the courts for civil liability, civil claims and the like, because we already know that civil claims of that nature take years to complete, and the victims have already suffered and have been displaced.
Sure. What's your ballpark figure, though?
In the media reports that they've been displaced and deported, in fact.
What's your ballpark figure, Osmond?
Well, there wouldn't be one, but I believe that Norton Rose Fulbright, who represent the victims, would be in a better place to say how much it is.
Okay.
For us, it was more of the principle than the actual amount.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. That was the Socio-Economic Rights Institute attorney there, Osmond Mngomezulu, reflecting on the report that came out yesterday. And of course, we're now waiting for part B of the report, which will look into the hijacking of the building. But already some of the details that have come through is that some drug lords use the building and could make up to 50,000 rand a day, and also found that children as young as 15 being trafficked in becoming sex workers also in that particular building.